Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from a Frontier, and thanks again for taking time out of your day to stop by. It's appreciated. Of course, I put up the link for the MindSpeak session with Christine Lagarde, and it really was a wonderful session. I wrote about her, and I called it the IMF Lagarde and the rabbit hole. The global recovery that is underway remains uneven and subdued, and its underlying dynamics are shifting. Recent indicators suggest that activity in advanced economies is gaining momentum. I believe the IMF will imminently upgrade the global economy. And I said it all took me into a rabbit hole, and I've been reading Thomas Pynchon and The Bleeding Edge. And this is my favorite quote, and I've said it before, I'm going to say it again. No matter how the official narrative turns out, these are the places we should be looking, not in newspapers or television, but at the margins, graffiti, uncontrolled utterances, bad dreamers who sleep in public and scream in their sleep. So there I am in a feedback loop back to the day when I had persuaded my directors at Credit Suisse First Boston to allow me to trade interest rate futures. I was given some chunky limits, and I had finally reached the cockpit. There I was with the green light to seriously expand the balance sheet. It was an exciting moment. And what with the government all set to pull the trigger on a Eurobond in an amount not less than $1.5 billion, and probably $2 billion if market conditions allow, and a proposed supersized railway spend, it seems to me that there are parallels between my moment many years ago and Kenya's moment in 2014. Now, when you trade futures, the first thing is you need to be right directionally. You want to be buying something that is going up or selling something that is going down. Otherwise, you will be stopped out. I am certain that blowing up the balance sheet to spend on infrastructure is the right thing. We are a transit state, the gateway to world markets for the EAC. The Bagamoyo project, therefore, is a fly in our ointment. And in order to embed and entrench that gateway status, we need first-class infrastructure. A gateway needs a gatekeeper, and we can charge a fee. So I have no doubt that directionally this is the right thing to do. In futures trading there is a term called slippage, which means where you intend to buy something for 1,000 shillings or $1,000 and you end up paying 1,050. That's 50 shillings of slippage right there. Too much slippage is self-evidently a very bad thing. Good trades turn bad, and before too long you will be stopped out. The current news flow in the high-low price range around the railways is signalling elevated slippage risk, in my view. I'll put up a photograph of the Mombasa-Nairobi railway that I took over Christmas. Another one of the railway crossing at Mactau Gate exit, which is on the Savo west side near the Tanzanian border. And finally, the railway crossing as seen at Maniani Gate, which is where we entered the Savo this time. I'll put up a photograph of Madame Lagarde with Vimal and myself at MindSpeak on the 6th of January. And I wrote then, if MindSpeak was an ice cream sundae, then Christine Lagarde's appearance is like the maraschino cherry that you find on top of the sundae. And finally, a photograph of Hannah, myself, and Christine Lagarde as we entered the Mara Ballroom. My home thoughts are still with Thomas Pynchon, 150 pages to go in Gravity's Rainbow. His life had been tied to the past. He'd seen himself a point on a moving wavefront, propagating through sterile history, a known past, a projectable future. But she was the breaking of the wave. Suddenly there was a beach, the unpredictable, new life, past and future stopped at the beach. That was how he'd set it out, but he wanted to believe it too. the same way he loved her past all words. Believe that, no matter how bad at the time, nothing was fixed, everything could be changed, and she could always deny the dark sea at his back, love it away, and selfishly, that from a sombre youth, squarely founded on death, along for death's ride, he might, with her, find his way to life and to joy. Sometimes my little one makes me feel like that. Put up a photograph of the peaks of Mount Kenya that I took 27 days ago, in point of fact. Political reflection. South Sudan talks resumed in Addis Ababa in a nightclub called Gaslight. The Gaslight Club was selected after the room in the Sheraton Hotel the teams had been using was booked by a Japanese delegation. This was taken over by Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, who is currently visiting Addis Ababa at the end of his first tour of Africa. The talks at the nightclub are at least taking place during the day, when the dance floor is not normally in use. Dubai leaders backs the easing of sanctions. This is Sheikh Mohammed told the BBC, "You see, Iran is our neighbor and we don't want any problem. Lift their sanctions and everybody will benefit." A Saudi government advisor called Sheikh Mohammed's comments on Iran mind-boggling. And I think, the point about the Prime Minister and ruler of Dubai is he is utterly aligned to trade. And I'll put up a photograph of him taking a tour inside an Airbus 380 during the Dubai Air Show in November last year. And I think that's the right call. And I've been talking about this for a while. A piece I wrote on the 28th of October about Barack Obama, Hassan Rouhani, and the two Husseins. And I was calling crude oil a lot lower then. I said, it was trading just below $110 at the end of August. And when I wrote this article, it was at 97.85. It's now at 92 change. And I said it's entirely correlated to a reduction in the geopolitical premium, as the two presidents thawed previously frozen relations. In fact, if the US and Iran were able to cut through the noise and to the chase, WTI, in my opinion, could trade as low as $75. And on that name, I'll put up that link for What's in a Name by Ai Weiwei. Robert Gates quoted Barack Obama as saying, "If I believe I am being gamed," about Afghanistan. And I think, well, he was, wasn't he? I like this photo of Kim Jong-un checking things on Monday that I found via Twitter. Of course, the Al-Shabaab have banned the internet. First smoking, then football, films and bras. Now Al-Shabaab has banned the internet, which is rather ironical given that they use Facebook, YouTube and Twitter to disseminate their views, and have been very professional in their ability to do exactly that. Euro 136.58, dollar index 80.63, yen 103.37, Swissy 0.9003, pound 163.83, Aussie 0.9029, India rupee 61.475, South Korean won 10.5840, Rial 235.96, Egyptian pound 695.74, and the Rand 1087.48, in big trouble and headed to 11. Dollar index, I'm going to put up a 3-month chart. I know at times last year I expected a violent dollar rally. I'm not convinced of it anymore, or in the near term. Euro dollar long at with a 133.80 stop. We're last at 136.58. Dollar yen 103.37. Of course, had a big bounce over the last few sessions. Suntory Holdings said it would buy U.S. spirits company Beam Inc. for $13.6 billion cash in a deal that would make the Japanese company the world's third largest spirits maker. It's interesting, the brands, it brings together Beam's Jim Beam, big brand, Maker's Mark, Bourbons, Courvoisier Cognac, that's big, Sauza Tequila with Suntory's Yamazaki, Hakushu, Hibiki and Kakubin Japanese whiskies, Bowmore Scotch whiskey and Midori liqueur. And my conclusion was Japan Inc. is back. Gold, we're up here at more than a 1 month high, 1251.70, and I still look for a $1,000 print in 2014. Crude oil, $92.22. Prices are down 6.9% this year. That blip above 100 on WTI was a real head fake. I look for further weakness towards $85. That's on the back of the thawing of the geopolitical premium. Frontier markets, I like this. The gilded head of a Buddha statue from 1,500 years ago is displayed inside a case at the National Museum of Afghanistan. Pretty impressive. Shinzo Abe met on Sunday with Mozambique's President Armando Guebuza, and he's now on the last part of his Middle East and Africa tour. The FT is saying, Wall Street Journal is saying he's trying to establish footholds in frontier markets where China's presence already looms large. Putting a positive spin on the situation, it's been an important mission for Abe. Met Sunday with President Armando Guebuza, and obviously that visit to Mozambique is all about the natural gas, and China's already in there. He's obviously looking to position Japan in there as well. They are the biggest buyers of LNG globally. Mr. Abe said the world remains rife with conflicts and clashes. With the people of West Africa, this was when he was visiting over there, we want to make the world a peaceful and prosperous place where rule of law, not force, will prevail. So it's Ivory Coast, now it's in Ethiopia. Toyota Motor Corporation, big brand, Japanese brand in Africa. They bought CFAO to build a sales network in West Africa. And Japan's goal is to reduce the number of fragile states in the region. If you wait until the security situation fully improves across Africa, there will be no market left for you, as senior Japanese officials said. And then, of course, the biggest example of Chinese dominance will become apparent on Tuesday when Mr. Abe gives his policy speech on Africa at the headquarters of the African Union, a $200 million building funded by China as a gift to the continent. And interestingly, they made that point about we're not here to build fancy buildings for your presidents, we want to bet on the human capital, which was quite clever. I think it's a nuanced and a finessed Africa play. Of course, Japan is behind the curve with respect to Africa when compared to China, but the Prime Minister is not to be underestimated. And Japan will increasingly look towards Africa for its natural gas. I'll put up a photograph of the Prime Minister arriving in Africa. Moving to South Sudan, Bor is still in the hands of the rebels, but our forces are moving towards it. This is Colonel Philip Aguirre on Monday. And then subsequently he said at least 200 people died when a boat ferrying people fleeing reports of violence in South Sudan's Upper Nile state sank. Reports that rebels captured Malakal are lies, and the only fighting going on in the country is taking place south of Bor, capital of Jonglei state. And no fighting is going on in Malakal. He said government forces expect to reach Bor by tomorrow, that's today, and recapture the town from rebel forces within 48 hours. I'll put up a photograph of the River Nile, seen from Da Vinci's in Juba, more than 5 years ago. South African oil share is down 0.44% this year. The Rand has 11 written all over it. It's now at 10.87. I'll put up a 1 month chart. Egyptian pound, and I said that in that interview I did with CNBC that the Rand was at the bleeding edge of the Fed's taper. Egyptian pound, we're at 695.48, a little bit softer. The Egyptian stock market is up 4.92% this year, 36-month highs, and has been the fastest, best performing African index so far this year. Nigerian oil shares plus 0.27%, Ghana Stock Exchange plus 1.54%, and that's also at a record high. I like this photograph of a lioness with Mount Gorongosa rising above Lake Urema and its floodplains. Love lions, beautiful animals. Somaliland, the self-declared sovereign state in the north of Somalia, is finalizing a multi-million-dollar deal to develop a port at Berbera in the Gulf of Aden. After 6 months of negotiations, an agreement has been put on the table, which is highly exciting, from one of the world's best port operators, says human rights lawyer Jason McHugh. who is assembling investors for a $2.5 billion logistics hub. The moment is there for Somaliland, he said. Newport intends to serve as an African-Arab trade hub, and according to an envoy working on the deal, would provide an export gateway for its landlocked neighbor Ethiopia, whose annual exports of goods that include coffee and gold were valued by The Economist in 2010 at $1.4 billion. We want to develop the corridor between Berbera and Ethiopia because that is really the lifeline. We are aiming at Ethiopia and believe that we could provide support to a third of the population there. I'll put up a photograph of Berbera. Sanlam are optimistic about African expansion. Angola, Mozambique, Zimbabwe, and other countries in East Africa have been identified as possible expansion projects in 2014. Africa's insurance penetration is approximately 1.6% compared to India, 3.4%, global average of around 7%. South Africa, meanwhile, boasts among the highest insurance penetrations anywhere in the world at 14%. Saying financial services businesses in these markets will therefore benefit from both the above-average economic growth potential and a catch-up in insurance penetration over time. Add to this the desire of governments and international investors to develop the burgeoning middle class in Africa and India, and you have a winning growth formula. Guinness has turned to a Congolese fashion cult, the Sapeurs, to star in its latest TV campaign. The link is on Rich Wrap-Ups. It's really rather good. And these are the fellows who cigar-wielding, dressed to the nines, bowler hats and tailored suits, tend to coalesce around Brazzaville. Martin Kobler told the UN Security Council there were credible reports of emerging M23 activities in Ituri in northeastern Congo, calling upon the governments of Uganda and Rwanda to do everything possible to prevent M23 elements from sheltering or training troops on their territory. We should tolerate no military re-emergence of the M23. Coming to Kenya, Kenya has good capabilities in the mining and agricultural sectors, and we're interested in boosting our cooperation with Kenya in the form of joint investment. This is Larry Gianni at a joint press conference with his Kenyan counterpart Ekwe Ithuro in Tehran. Nakumatt's looking for bank loans to finance its ShopRite buyout in Tanzania, estimated to cost 4 billion shillings, just under $50 million. But there's an interesting analysis by GCR, which says that Nakumatt's profitability is being eroded by interest payments on loans that the retailer has borrowed for working capital, and saying that management is in advanced negotiations with a third-party investor to inject new capital into the business, which would markedly improve the group's credit risk profile and provide funding for medium-term growth. Saying much of the debt raised has been short-term in nature, placing liquidity pressure on Nakumatt. They have been in the process of buying out 3 Tanzanian stores, or ShopRite stores. 2 of the outlets are in Dar es Salaam, 1 is in Arusha. Nakumatt already has a presence in Tanzania with a branch in Moshi. Kenya shilling last trading at 86.297. Firma, it was not shy of 87 not too long ago. Nairobi all shares up 3.549% in 2014. 2-day correction we've had after a very strong rush out of the blocks. Have a look at that interview I did with Nazifo Mbanjwa of CNBC, because I spoke about what I thought in that. That link's on Rich Wrap-Ups. NSE 20 up 1.83% in 2014 and above 5,000. The all-share eased 0.572% yesterday. Second best performing index in Africa, up 3.549% so far this year, after Egypt, which is at 36-month highs, and up 4.92%. NSE 20 fell 42 points yesterday. Bulls would like to see that NSE 20 index hold above 5,000. Diamond Trust set an all-time high. Safaricom took a breather after an 18.686% rally over the last 4 weeks. Scan Group has bounced 21.726% in 2014. Part of the reasons are because people have worked out that WPP is now in a majority. The network value of that WPP majority position was not previously being considered. Insurers were a strong feature. Yesterday, Kenya Re up 402%. trades on a very low PE of just 4.2. Britam up 1.857%. And just generally, they've been a strong feature since November. Home Africa firm 0.84%, heavy volume. Kengen has been on a losing streak because everyone's worried about the number of shares that they'll be selling in the rights issue. If you want to track the stock market in real time, and it's open from 9:30 Kenya time, which is 3 hours ahead of GMT, to 1500 hours Kenya time, just register on rich.co.ke. It's free. Get a password and then go to Rich Live, where you can watch the market in real time. Once again, thank you so much for stopping by.